Alright, time to do that Disventure Camp Hot Takes video. Let's see how many comments I... 360, huh? That's a big number. I think I forgot what fandom I was dealing with for a moment there. So first of all, thank you for leaving your thoughts on that community post. I'm not gonna get to everybody. There were a lot of people with very similar takes to one another, some people who put multiple takes in the same comment, and some people who were very verbose in explaining their rationale, which, I mean, I like that, I think that bolsters your claim, but there were so many of them, I can't get to everyone. So if I do leave your comment behind, please don't be upset. I can maybe do a part 2 of this kind of video, it's just so everyone can get their voices heard. Also, as you may know, I am very emotional and very vocal about this show, so if you have a take that I deem to be bad, I will make fun of it. But I won't make fun of you as a person, and I really hope you don't unsubscribe because of anything I say in this video. Please? With that being said, let's begin the video. From Giggly Iggly, Disventure Camp should have more animated characters going forward. The series is way better at handling wacky concepts such as an evil child, Gabby's imaginary alter ego, and Yule's comedic disregard for anyone who isn't himself, compared to more grounded characters like Alec who have a serious case of tonal whiplash. Absolutely yes. Unlike Total Drama, Disventure Camp is trying to be primarily a drama. It has a lot of jokes, yes, but mainly the goal is to make you care about these characters and the dramatic plot lines that they have. And this is a really effective approach when the writing is good, and the writing is really only good in Season 1. Now that's not to say that Disventure Camp needs to fill its cast with a bunch of zany, goofy characters like Total Drama does, but if they're going to keep their characters grounded and more serious, with dramatic plotlines being the main focus, then they need to be consistent. And because you brought up Alec, I'm gonna quickly talk about why he's a pretty good example of how this can go wrong. Alec is a character who is 90% drama and maybe 10% comedy, if we're being generous. So when All Stars comes around and he starts acting like a gigantic tool and, you know, starts talking about how he doesn't love his son. I know he doesn't talk about it, but it's confirmed he doesn't really like his son, so that's something. That doesn't really track with the mostly chill dude we knew in Season 1, and because of how abrupt a change that is, and how poorly it's written, it makes Alec incredibly unlikable and destroys pretty much everything the first season built up. That's why inconsistency is less of a problem for me when we're talking about a lot of Total Drama characters, or Yule, because they have comedy to fall back on. Alec, and a lot of other characters who have been derailed in this sense, do not, so yes, I agree with this take. From Eclipsemon, I think that the final 3 of Disventure Camp All-Stars is perfect on paper. If you made Rhea and Jake less extreme and more nuanced in All-Stars, and gave Allie more spotlight prior to episode 14, you could get a perfect final 3. But they also say that Tess and Allie are more support characters than anything as they are in All-Stars, and if you change who they are in All-Stars for them to be more than that, then you might as well do the same with any character in All-Stars and it would work too. First of all, that is a really bad run-on sentence. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go all English teacher on you, but something to keep in mind for the future. And second of all, this comment is kind of a contradiction. Because to me, it kind of seems like you're advocating against the idea that Ashley and Tess are written differently to accommodate them winning in All-Stars, but also suggesting that the final 3 that we got would get overhauled in writing in some way. Now, I don't believe that was your intention. I fully believe that what this comment was trying to convey is that, as they are, on paper, the final 3 we have more narrative potential than the final 3 we almost had. And I fervently disagree with this. Allie's entire character was overhauled in order to make her plot in All-Stars work, and given that Tess was the one who was going to take her place, and given that Tess already had some things to work off, such as, you know, depression, I think Tess would have been a much more natural fit into that role, especially given the setup with Gabby early into the season. And going off of the idea that this final 3 would be Season 1 Jake and Season 2 Rhea, Still no. I don't think Rhea is nearly well written or likable enough to be a double finalist. A double merger is a stretch. And while I'm sure that her storyline could have been very satisfactory if written better, that applies to any character, as you've said. So why not Alec instead? The idea of a villain who feels bad about their actions but does so anyway in order to get ahead works way better with Alec given how his run ended in Season 1. I like the idea that after being betrayed by Fiore in Season 1, Alec decides to play a more cutthroat game in Season 3 in order to avoid being eliminated in the same way. But after interacting with some other characters, let's be honest, probably Connor, he ends the game with the realization that this isn't the man he wants to be. And while I'm not Ashley's biggest fan, I mean, come on, Jake's getting his own spin-off. Let's spread the screen time around a little bit, okay? From Nehelber, Connor is the best character in All-Stars and should have won the season. All of his positives far outweigh the negatives of the writing, but people overhate him and exaggerate his flaws while ignoring the positives. Now there is some truth to this. I believe that Connor does have a lot of positives in All-Stars that often get overlooked in the later episodes, but at the same time, you kinda have to admit that he fell off at least a little bit. Connor has had some very strong scenes since his return, I'm not gonna deny that, and personally I feel like a lot of people tend to forget a lot of these scenes. I think the scene in episode 14 with Jake is one of my personal favorites because of how it adds new dimensions to Connor's character whilst expanding upon his stuff in Season 2. He also, indirectly, saved the show. Because by the time Connor returned, the quality of the cast basically went to fuck. And there were really only 2 other characters who were any good. And you can probably guess who those are. Sure as hell ain't these 2, that's for sure. Nah, but prior to Connor's return, everyone was just sort of bitching and arguing with each other and nothing was getting done, and he was the guy to kind of put that on hold. I think the idea that Connor becoming a mentor figure to the younger kids in Season 2 is really expanded upon here very nicely. It felt like a natural continuation of his character, while also breaking up the monotony of All-Stars, which I really liked, and that really made Connor one of my favorites for, like, 4 episodes. But the Rhea stuff is just not good. Because of a lot of stuff with her, Connor just kind of turns into this weird, sad man who's just, like, always depressed all the time, and that's not really entertaining. I think that's when I started to realize that Connor was more of a writer's pet than I thought. Because Connor kept getting all of these moments and all of this development and all of these scenes ultimately for him to just get 4th, so what was the point really? So ultimately, I believe that Connor has a lot of strengths and a lot of weaknesses in All-Stars, and we really shouldn't be ignoring either of them. From Apocalypse, Nick is insanely overrated. Hey, that's funny. I think this comment had a typo. Let me just put this over here. Oh god, okay. I don't think I said that too loud. I don't think we have anything to worry about, so we're just gonna move on to the next take, and everything will be okay.
I'm sorry. What did you just say?
I'll have you know damn well that this is slander to Nicholas Richard Smith Crackerjack Esquire Milton III. Overrated? Pfft, what is there overrated about this man? If anything, his sheer existence is not appreciated enough. I mean, look at this British hunk. He deserves to be on the platform of Tumblr sexy men. What is there not to like about Nick? He's 26, has a pretty awesome coat and hat, his goatee, mwah, iconic. Not to mention that this man has such pristine hobbies, such as, spending all of his money and peeing while standing up. That part doesn't matter. The important part is that this man, this hunk, this Brit, this blonde icon is my husband, and I will defend him every step of the way. But he was only in like 4 episodes of the whole show and didn't even have a major role.
I don't care.
It's okay, Nick. Don't listen to them. You're just jealous.
Well, isn't this lovely? Now I have to console them. Thank you for that. I really wanted to spend my Saturday doing this. Kiva Productions claims that Tess is the best character in Disventure Camp, and already you've lost me, but let's continue. They go on to say that Tess's arc is one of the best in the series and that there needs to be more Tess love in the world. Now consequently, Utah Rainbow Sprinkles goes on to say that Tess was very flawed in All-Stars, had a very good arc in Season 2, although there were things that could have been expanded upon, but ultimately Tess was wasted in All-Stars because she didn't get to interact with Hunter, Allie, Gabby, Ellie, but got basically nothing in that season. Now I personally agree with this one. And here's why. There's a lot to like about Tess in Season 2. Despite how flawed that season is, Tess has plenty of good scenes between her and Allie, and occasionally Hunter. And these scenes show Tess as someone suffering from depression, and I think it is shown in a very realistic and tactful way. Now in Season 2, Tess gets sent home pretty early, which, you know, that's okay. You know what, her arc was kinda complete, she had a good ending. All things considered, it makes some amount of sense. Now don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. I think the main problem is that she relies on Allie and Hunter a little too much, but there's room for improvement. This can be followed up on in a later season. And then none of this was followed up on in a later season. So for those of you who don't know, which I imagine is very few of you by this point, in the original elimination order for All-Stars, Tess was going to get second. Now I don't know when this elimination order was changed to move Tess further down on the list, but I feel like it had to have been at least a few episodes in, because to me, it feels like they were setting up a lot of things for Tess in this season that just never paid off. Interesting considering the trajectory of the season. Keep in mind that the general consensus of All-Stars, regardless of how you feel on the season as a whole, is that the earlier episodes are generally better. Now I would consider these earlier episodes to range from episodes 1 to 6, because God knows no one is coming to episode 7's defense anytime soon. So what were the main plot lines going on at that time? Well, if you ask me, I would have said Tom, Jake, and Aiden, Alec and Connor, and then Tess and Ellie. And Tess and Ellie is interesting because I genuinely think this is the best dynamic in the entire season. And it enrages me because this doesn't even make it to merge. I understand that Ellie was never planned to make it there in the first place, but even then, there were still a lot of good building blocks here that could have expanded into a different story. It really seemed like Season 2 was the start of her story, and All-Stars was gonna be where it finally unfurled, allowing her to take center stage and become the main character that we always knew she could be. But no, instead of a realistic and pretty entertaining budding rivalry, we instead get two fucking idiots arguing with each other for the entire season because I don't know. Tess is not a fully realized character, and that's a damn shame because from what it seemed like, the fully realized version of Tess was going to be very good. Everything she had going for her got cut in order to make room for, quite frankly, less interesting characters. And I hate that because I genuinely believe that Tess could have been one of the series' best characters. But as is, we really only got to see 20% of what that character could have been, and the rest of her appeal can pretty much be summed up as, oh hey look, goth girl. So unfortunately, I can't say she's one of the best characters in the series given that she's probably the most underwritten character to compete in 2 seasons. But thankfully, it is far from the worst I've ever seen a female protagonist treated. If you get it, and if you don't trust me, you do not want to know. So yeah, they really did not do Tess justice this season, which is why I think they should have stuck with that first elimination order. Derek Roses states that Miriam's fake death is one of the worst written things in the series, and then goes on to state a few reasons as to why, and some inconsistencies as well. My first thought upon reading this comment was, wow, this is definitely an Ellie fan, and then I went into the replies and found out that yes, my assertion was correct. Derek, my friend, I thank you for taking the time to comment this, but in my humble opinion, you are just being salty. I love Miriam's fake death. It's incredibly surprising in the moment, but it totally makes sense for Miriam to do. Miriam is a 76-year-old grandmother. What else did you want her to do? You know, while we're here, I got a lot of comments that suggested that Miriam was a bad winner, and I simply can't have that, so let me defend my queen real quick. Miriam often gets overlooked in her little trio when compared to Tom, Jake, but she actually has a very vital role to play. Tom is the brawn. He's by far the strongest of the three, and he's usually the one to help out when they need something physical done. Jake is the heart of the alliance, and it's because of his connections to the other two that this alliance was able to form in the first place. And even though Miriam is definitely good at challenges in her own right, I think it's more fair to say that she's the strategist of the alliance. She's by far the smartest of the three, and she's usually the one leading the other two into the votes. Keep in mind as well, she's the person who took down Fiore and Alec. Sure, Ellie helped out with that, but if it wasn't for Miriam's influence, that probably wouldn't have happened. And the reason that she was able to do this is because, unlike Tom and Jake, Miriam is actually willing to get down and dirty and play a cutthroat game just like the villains. And while Alec and Fiore did give her some trouble, she never had a personal beef to settle with them, unlike with Ellie. And considering that Ellie did seemingly irreparable damage to Jake and Tom's relationship, I think it's only fair that Miriam would want some revenge. And the fake heart attack was a really good way to do that. So I find it really weird that so many Ellie fans are against Miriam because by all accounts, they're very similar characters. Whenever people talk about Ellie, they always share the sentiment, she'll do whatever it takes to win. But that idea also applies to Miriam. The only difference is that one of these women kept betraying her allies and the other was loyal to the end. Majorly disagree with this take. I hope that when I'm 70, I'm at least half as cool as Miriam is. Hey there, Venus, thank you for stopping by. I see you have quite a few takes, so I'm gonna quickly go over each one. First off, Lil is underrated and a better character than Ashley and the rest of the four-person alliance. I mean, Lil is my personal favorite of the four, and I honestly think that if she was in All-Stars in Ashley's place, she really could have done a much better job in that role, so I agree with this one. Jaden is a better ship than Gabby. Oh hell yeah, sister, I'm right there with you. I don't care what any of y'all say, I'm a Jaden truther for life. Because honestly, I think these two, more than any other couple in Disventure Camp, are just really good for each other. Seeing James work on becoming a better person for Aiden's sake while Aiden slowly opens up to James in return is honestly one of the sweetest things I think this show has ever done. And I'm so glad that these two got a happy ending together. They really deserve it. We're gonna talk about Dan later. Rhea deserved to win over Jake and Allie because she at least tried being strategic. I mean, gameplay-wise, sure, but did any of them really deserve to win in the end? Imagine you're walking down an alleyway late at night and suddenly you get jumped by 3 feral dogs. Now, 2 of these dogs are in the back fighting with each other, just generally being obnoxious, and one of them is on your ass trying to bite you and take your food that you just bought from the local deli. Now, one of these dogs is clearly making more of an effort to get the food, and thus they would technically be more deserving of it, but you really don't want to give your food to any of them. And considering that dog number 3 is actively making your life worse, you would be half tempted to throw your food over to one of the other 2 dogs out of spite. But you really don't want them to have it either. You would instead want to go home and give your food to your little Shih Tzu that you have in your back porch, because you know that despite the fact that he's an absolute menace, he's your little menace and you love him. And if you're going to ask why we're giving deli food to a dog, it's because he deserves it. Well, actually, it's because he's very high maintenance and he won't eat anything else, but he's funny, so we let it slide. And last but not least, Trevik isn't a good ship and they're much better off as friends. Look, Yowie fans, I know y'all desperate, y'all can't be this desperate. Raise your standards. From Pizka, they need to stop being too unpredictable. Sometimes the predictable route is better. I wholeheartedly agree with this. Being unpredictable for the sake of being unpredictable does not make for a well-written TV show. Both the characters in the story have to have valid reasons for voting off a certain character, and the elimination also has to be satisfying from a narrative standpoint for the audience. If they can do both of these things while still subverting expectations, then that's a sign of a good, unpredictable elimination. I actually think Ashley's elimination is a pretty good example of this. Unfortunately, a lot of the other eliminations in All-Stars tend to fall pretty flat. And a lot of that seems to come from the writers wanting to shock the audience over making an elimination that is very well written. So hopefully they've learned their lesson from this and Season 4 has less eliminations like these. From Publix, Dan is ironically and unironically a great character. I got a lot of comments talking about Dan, which is very strange. I wonder why I got so many comments about that character in particular, but sure, I'll talk about him. I'm not gonna argue that Dan is secretly the best character in the series or anything, but I think he has a lot of positives that people tend to overlook. Dan is the most purely logical player in Season 1 aside from maybe Alec. He operates purely on a gameplay level and doesn't really take into account how other people feel or how he himself even feels. That's why he went along with the Boys Alliance in their decision to vote Gabby, because he knew it'd be the safest decision for him in the game. He is the one guy in this season who personally stepped away from all of the big relationships because he knew it was just gonna cause him trouble. I'm sorry he's not in an MLM relationship, but my man is on that ball. He wants that cash, dollar, dollar. He doesn't have the most animated personality, especially in comparison to Gabby, who he interacts with the most. But I don't know, man, I still think his arc with her was pretty good, and honestly, he was about as relevant in this season as Tess was in either of hers, so I think that's gotta count for something. He's also coming after you. Rhea and Yul winning the prize money was a great decision, even if she doesn't deserve it. It teaches us that sometimes in life, bad people get away with it. It's a hard but brave decision. Okay, first of all, you should not be taking any life lessons away from Disventure Camp All-Stars. The only season that has a really good message, in my personal opinion, is Season 2. But let's pretend for a moment that the ending and the message of episode 21 is well written and is of quality. It absolutely is not, but let's just pretend for a moment. Does that even remotely begin to make up for the fact that 2/3 of this season was hot garbage? No. I will say the social media slideshow at the end is pretty good, and I imagine that when people are referring to the ending of Disventure Camp All-Stars, they're referring to this scene. And in addition to just being a very good scene, it's also very moving and impactful, out of context. In context, it's a fucking joke. Because this scene tries to do two things. It's here to show you how all the other people are doing, which is fine, I can live with that. It's a nice little bookend to their journeys. But it also tries to make you feel bad for Rhea, and that is not possible. Am I supposed to feel sorry for Rhea that she doesn't have any friends? Am I supposed to feel vindicated by the fact that she doesn't have any friends? I don't feel either way about it, because that punishment is way too soft. And if you're going to argue, oh, but that's so realistic, so it's good, well, it would be pretty realistic if we sat down with Connor for an episode and watched him do his taxes, but I imagine people probably wouldn't want to see that. So that's the main reason why I think the ending of Disventure Camp All-Stars kinda sucks, actually. But even beyond that, I really don't buy the idea that they were going for, oh, the evil person won because it's realistic, blah 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 blah. I know for a fact that's not what they were going for, because I know what happened behind the scenes. It is to my understanding that after episode 20, the initial plan was to have Jake win, and this was changed at the last second because all the proofreaders came in, realized how much vitriolic hate Jake was receiving, and changed it last second to be Rhea because her winning would be slightly better written. Rhea did not win for the sake of telling this profound, bittersweet narrative. She won because Twitter would have destroyed Odd Nations had Jake won. For the sake of privacy, I'm not going to reveal who told me this, but it's not exactly private information. You can find it if you look. And now is probably a good time to remind everyone that no matter what I say about your takes in this video, I hold no ill will to you as a person, so please don't unsubscribe. I respect you as people even if I don't agree with your opinions, and that's okay. And quickly speedrunning these last two, Will should have lasted longer so we could see more of his relationship with Ashley. I think Will is way too cool to be a first boot, so yeah, I agree. Also would have given Ashley someone to work off of, which would have been nice. And lastly, Fiore should have returned alongside Connor in episode 11. No. I think we had enough villains by that point, and if Fiore did return, the villains just would have crushed the heroes with their numbers, which I imagine a few people wanted to see, but I'm good. Thanks. Low Benbaz. Okay, so there's a lot of takes here, so once again, I'm gonna go through these pretty quickly. Will, Drew, Maggie, Kai, Jake, Connor, and Ashley are all great characters. I'll be honest, I find some of these choices a little strange, but I still rock with your vision. These are all characters that I've written for at some point, so I have some weird favorites too. I gotta talk about Ferdinand one day, y'all are not ready. Rhea is 1,000 times worse than any total drama character. Pick your poison. Connor returning was good, yes. Gabby shouldn't have won, also yes. Thank God someone agrees. Miriam deserved her season 1 win, hell yes. You are batting 3 in a row, this is a pretty good record. Let's see if you can close it out. Total drama is infinitely better. Okay, oh wow, people are gonna get mad at me for this one. See, there's a bit of a double standard to where if people say Disventure Camp is better than Total Drama, then that's fine, but if people say Total Drama is better than Disventure Camp, suddenly you're punching down and you're not being fair because one of these is an independent project. And in the case of something like animation or voice acting, then I would agree, it would be unfair to compare the two. But if we're only comparing these shows by the quality of their writing and the characters, then Total Drama curb stomps Disventure Camp, and it is not even close. Considering the reboot came out around the same time as Disventure Camp, we're going to use this cast as our example. Now, the reboot is split into 2 different seasons. The first focuses a little more on drama, and the second focuses a little more on comedy. That's not to say that Season 1 isn't funny or that Season 2 doesn't have some genuinely good drama, but for the most part, this is what you get, and you get a pretty healthy mix of both of these elements. On one end, you have the sillier characters, namely Z, Chase, and the Hockey Bros, who are bonkers funny and keep things lighthearted. They can be involved with dramatic plotlines, but for the most part they're here to make you laugh, and I think they handily succeed, even when other comedic characters like Ripper don't. And on the other end of the coin, you have the dramatic characters, namely Priya, Bowie, Julia, and Caleb. Yes, I'm counting Caleb in this group because he's awesome and I love him. Hop off my king. These are the characters with stronger plotlines and stakes, and generally speaking, these are the main characters of the reboot, plus Millie. And they are also really funny. Bowie in Season 1 is especially hilarious, but that just makes the drama between them hit even harder, and even if the drama starts to stall, or maybe it's not written as well as you might like, there's always a joke around the corner to make up for it. That's why I think this cast and the writing of the reboot in general is very, very strong, because they all work together in tandem and they bounce off of each other near flawlessly. Disventure Camp doesn't really do that. Season 1 comes pretty close, even though I still strongly prefer the reboot, but the other seasons really fumble the bag. The cast is barely connected in Season 2. They're all off doing their own thing with their own storylines, and they barely ever cross paths. This is best exemplified by James and Hunter, who, to my recollection, despite being the season's winner and 4th placer respectively, don't even talk until like the 3rd to last episode. And I don't think I need to explain the problems with All Stars any more than I already have. They just won't stop arguing. And maybe that would be compelling if they had a good reason to argue with one another, but no, this is basically the equivalent of watching children fight over toys in a sandbox. It's technically drama, but I'd be more inclined to call it a nuisance. I think the best season of Disventure Camp is leagues better than the worst 2 seasons of Total Drama, but that's really the best I can say about it. Disventure Camp is never gonna hit the same highs as the original trilogy or the reboot, and honestly, I think the best it could ever get is around Roti levels of quality. But that's okay. Total Drama is one of my favorite shows of all time. I've watched each season at least 10 times, and the fact that this independent web series can be compared to Total Drama at all is an absolutely incredible accomplishment. Again, if you prefer Disventure Camp, that's more than fine. I think there are even a few things that it does better than Total Drama, but these are my overall thoughts on this discussion, and I hope you can see where I'm coming from. From Exofrick, Disventure Camp peaked with the beta. Now, after reading your entire comment, I partially agree with what you're saying. I think that Disventure Camp would absolutely benefit from going to a more comedic angle. That way it would help break up some of the tension from the drama and make the series a little easier to watch. But I don't know if they peaked with the beta. Just on a technical level, I think the animation and voice acting in later seasons is significantly better than really anything the beta had going for it. So based off of that, I don't know. From Sunflower Mink. Grett could have been written so much better this season. She did almost nothing pre-merge other than recruit Gabby, and her being herself again was so sudden. Yeah, I'm kinda with you here. I don't hate the way this storyline was written, the pacing is just really wonky. Grett competes in 17 episodes out of 21, and really only gets to be herself in about 4.5 of them. She's not awful in those earlier episodes, it's just that she spends so much of her time on All-Stars being a less interesting version of herself. The community is very emphatic with their appreciation for Grett in this season, and while I understand where they're coming from, I don't really agree. I think she's definitely one of the better written characters this season, but I don't think she's the slam dunk perfect character that a lot of people think she is. I think she's just the best acted. Vanessa Venture, in my opinion, gave Grett the best vocal performance of the season. And I think that performance really carried the character when she was going through this rough spot. And given the writing quality of the rest of the final 5, she looked a lot better by comparison. I still like Grett in All Stars, I just don't think she's peak fiction like everyone says. Peak voice acting for sure, though. Next one is from Neo Knight, and I apologize, but I'm really only going to go over the first one in that much detail, but I have read the other 3, and I do agree with them. We just went over Grett, so let's talk about Gabby, and boy do I have a bone to pick with this character. You see, Gabby's fan base doesn't seem to like me all that much, which I can't possibly understand why that would be the case. It's probably because I'm hot. Now, before I begin this next section, please seriously do not go harass anyone who said anything to me in this vein. That's really lame, and we don't need that kind of of negativity in this community. Gabby, however, is a fictional character, and I can't hurt a fictional character's feelings, so how about I have a little fun with this section? I mean, I'm never gonna get the chance to use this particular Megamix track as background music because it's just too loud. Might as well use it now. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm Lil Darky. I yell, I smoke, I shoot things. Fuck what you is, what you ain't. Nigga, you a walking tank. I'm a fake, I'm a saint, I'm a not. Nigga, stop. Fuck your inhibitions, I'ma drown them in the drop. In the walk, we should pop at the cops on our block. The rock with the killers and the knocks. Yo, niggas that might spill you with the Glock. Keep the vision like a hawk. Boy, got intuition like he's Spock. Yo, during intermission, you can talk to your friends. I got first things first, I'ma hang to the main frame. Pussy niggas, pussy on these niggas say the same thing. I'm kind of mystery, drinking my red cup, wiping my back as I'm robbing from sun up to sundown. I say niggas wanna be my son now. I'ma put some thick with all these drugs now. Run up, you get gunned down. I shoot a woman in the club, it's a hold down. Big ass chain and it's hanging by my nuts now. Every time that we commit a crime, it goes properly. Robbing all these niggas cause I'm still living in poverty. You know we gon' feel no pressure from these puny MCs. So much pressure on my blood, these little niggas can't put your hands up, high up when I'm in it. Big dollar cash, I'm about to dive in it. And the ride that I ride, get dark when I'm in it. It's so damn dark, can't find the guy in it.
I put my faith inside an uncaring God's palm. 10 years until my paradigm shifted. DMC dialogue, I ran the
This one's kind of a toss-up, actually. They're both pretty annoying sometimes.
walls of my skull until my feet bled black. I'm near the peak, step back, I felt your eyes graze my silhouette to the moon sank. Kerosene flame, fit the wet, I'm with 2 tanks. Fucked up, I lost my friends again and again. It's always words I should've.
Sexiest guy of Disventure camp.
No, you can't do this.
So yeah, needless to say, I think Gabby is just a trifle overrated. And while it was a little unfortunate that she was canonically murdered by Little Darky for bullying people on Twitter, ultimately I think this fate was a little bit deserved. Go listen to the full song on the Megamix YouTube channel. Shiro Gwyn says that Carol deserved better. I think she deserved to not be voiced by a Zionist, but in terms of placement, nah, she got what she deserved. JBro Comics says, "Hey Lexi, longtime listener, first time caller. Thank you for listening to my stuff, I really appreciate it. Dan is the best character in Disventure Camp for several reasons, but one of them being his voice actor easily has one of the best performances in a season. Yeah, I think Genesis does a really good job with Dan, and they better do a good job with Hero because they got the role over me. I'm not actually upset about that, I just think it's funny how that whole thing played out. And then they also think that Carol deserved a spot in All-Stars instead of Tess. I'm gonna say no to this for 2 reasons. The first is that I hate Carol and I really wouldn't want to see any more of her than I already have. And the second is that if Tess didn't make it into All-Stars, everyone would be asking why she got cut and we'd probably never hear the end of that. No thank you, I would rather not. James's actions are way worse than Ellie's, and while James does redeem himself in Season 2, his actions are treated as him just making mistakes. And not a big deal when he literally used Aiden to gang Cloud at first before actually liking him. With Ellie, the narrative goes out of its way to constantly demonize her in the Blue Lions route when the worst thing she did was join those who slither in the dark and lie to Byleth about it. The narrative paints it in a way worse light than it should, especially when Rhea gives that stupid ultimatum to choose between Edelgard and the Church of Saros, when there really shouldn't be a choice because, mind you, Edelgard had her crest experimented on. She can set out to achieve both her goals, and she very clearly still cares about Byleth in the duration of Crimson Flower, so this makes Rhea look like an insensitive jerk. I hope my allusions to best-selling Nintendo Switch game Fire Emblem Three Houses has given you an idea as to why this comment is a little off the mark. First of all, James is absolutely nowhere near as bad as Ellie. He started being genuine with Aiden as early as episode 6. The narrative does not forget the bad things that James does, but it allows him to improve because he's actively trying to be better. The worst thing he did was lie to Aiden about his intentions, but as of episode 6, that stopped being a lie, and he spent a long time trying to atone for that. Eleanor, by contrast, exploited Jake's very real trauma over being cheated on in order to get him to turn against Tom, not only destroying their relationship, but emotionally devastating both of them in the process, causing a rift between them that is not resolved until 2 seasons later in the final episode. When James and Aiden broke up because Aiden found out what James was really doing at the start of the season, he was mad for like a day, and then they made up. That is several months of grief that lies squarely on Ellie's shoulders. And the reason that the narrative is so hard on her is because she's a villain. A villain who, unlike James, clearly did not care about the damage she caused, even bragging about it in the first episode of All Stars.
I heard that Tom still ignores Jake's calls. Can you blame him? Dealing with Jake should count as community service. And Tom's no better. I mean, the guy's an idiot. Who goes onto reality TV as a spy? Miriam didn't deserve to win. Faking your own death just to test my sympathy? She's twisted. If that happens again, I'm letting her go towards the light. The purple team was a disaster. How did Ashley not see through Fiore immediately? Alec and I knew from the start. But hey, the girl lives on a farm in Texas. Her intelligence matches her home life, that's all I'll say. Grett is honestly one of, if not the worst person I've ever met. I heard she's flipped things around recently, but I don't buy it. Alec told Fiore he wished his son was more like her. First off, Alec, your standard for children is alarming. And second, if I were Alec's son, I'd never want to see my dad again. Like, poor kid. He said that on international television. He's a real piece of work.
Y'all can defend Ellie all you want, but to suggest that she's just a poor, impoverished girl who's only doing this to win and isn't at all a bad, spiteful person is just objectively untrue. Ellie, for most of Disventure Camp, is a very cruel, mean, and downright malicious person at times. And most of this is during All Stars. And she doesn't really get time to work on and improve herself until she's out of the game. Episode 19 is a really good showing for her for this reason. Believe me, I can understand why people want to root for Ellie. I have some friends who are very crazy about Ellie, and I totally get it. You just kinda have to accept that when you're cheering for Ellie, you're cheering for a villain. And that's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's just fun to watch people talk shit for a while. Ellie can be morally reprehensible and a victim of circumstance. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. And by no means is James worse than her. That's just crazy. I disagree with this take, but I thank you for sharing it. Wince Media with a lot of technical takes. Okay, this should be fun. There are no bad elimination orders, only bad executions. I do not know if the previous elimination orders would have been better than what we got because we lack the context behind them. Now this is a fair assertion. For all we know, the original order of Disventure Camp All-Stars could have been the worst series since Sonic Lives. So we can look at the orders on paper and decide which ones we think would be better, but we really don't know what that other one could have been like if it did happen. Now I hold firm in my opinion that the original elimination order would have been better. And I say this because I watched an entire season focused around the final three, and I have decided that I do not like them, and I think that another final three would have been better. The Disventure Camp greetings are reasonably priced. So I'll say up front that I've never purchased a Disventure Camp greeting, nor do I plan to. I've also never worked in animation, so I can't really explain the process behind the creation of the greetings. But my friend Ultraviolarts can and has. They have a video on their YouTube channel that goes into great detail about the Disventure Camp greetings, and I would highly recommend giving it a watch if you haven't already. And if you have seen the video, well then I regret to inform you that there's really not much else I can say that they haven't already discussed in their video. They're a lot more qualified to talk about this than I am, so I would defer to them for any topics relating to greetings. Episode 21 is one of the better, if not one of the best, DCAS episodes. My thoughts on this episode are already pretty well documented, so I'm just going to defer to this other video that I've made. And lastly, conflicts revolving around staff stories because the writing is really good, but Odd Nations is clearly spreading themselves thin in order to make it. I'm going to be optimistic and choose to believe that Odd Nations is working this hard because they have a lot of money from the greetings and their team is very passionate about making this product. I think staff stories is a really good writing exercise because it allows for the writers to break out of the routine they've been in since season 2. And I'm hoping that the good writing that we're starting to see in staff stories is going to carry on into season 4. Speak of the devil, Ellie's cave monologue was pretty mixed. On one hand, she does bring up some good points, Jake feeding off the smallest setbacks, being loyal to some degree even if Jake voted out Gabby, but saying Jake deserved to be cheated on for his behavior was very not good. This is pretty much how I feel too. Jake definitely needed someone to call him out on his emotional outbursts because he needed to learn that he had to take responsibility for his own behavior and the consequences thereof. Because admittedly, the guy does have a bit of a victim complex, and he wasn't really taking responsibility for any of the things that were indirectly or directly his fault. But then again, he was more than justified to be angry at Ellie for what she did in the previous elimination ceremony, and her reaction is a tad extreme. I don't think anything Jake said to her justified that kind of reaction. From Music Meltdown, Kai would have been a better character slot than Allie in All-Stars. Okay, wife, I love you, but no, this is not it. No Cybertech alligator for a week. What I find absolutely hysterical is that you got smushed between two Dan comments. Where did the Dan fans come from? Why are there so many in this comment section? Me and my screwdriver. James is one of the worst characters of Disventure Camp. Oh god. Look, man, I know what you're getting at, and it's not really a discussion I want to have, so let me just say that it might be better if we don't put that on James and instead attribute that to the guy writing him. That episode was hot garbage, and I think we'd all do well to leave it out of our minds forever. Lil is the best Disventure Camp character. I like Lil, and I think Lil deserves more appreciation, so I agree with this take. And lastly, Nick is a good character. This shouldn't be a hot take, but I've seen way too many people dislike him. He's funny as shit, not much else to say on him. See, Korza, Nick still does have fans. You can be happy now. Are you going there? Thank you! I'm going there! Hot take, every contestant from Season 1 and 2 should have been in All-Stars. I think you gave all of the animators watching this an aneurysm. On a serious note though, I know this idea sounds really good on paper, but in practice it's very impractical and time-consuming. Keep in mind that is 28 characters to voice act, write for, and animate. For the sake of everyone who works on this show, let's maybe not do that. Baseball II solos the DC-verse. Yes! Yes, he does. Jake shouldn't have been in All-Stars. It should have been someone less developed in Season 1, like Dan or Drew. No? Look, I don't like the guy in All-Stars either, but you can't just take him out of the season. He is pretty definitively, by this point, the main character of the show. It kinda goes against the point of All-Stars to just leave him out. You really think they were gonna give Drew a character arc even if he did get in? Nah, I don't think so. Okay, I can feel my lungs and computer about to give out, so I think we have time for one more. Korza Corpse comes at us with the hottest take yet. Not really, but, you know, it's a good way to end off. I think the animation in Season 1 is much better than All-Stars. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this is not my area of expertise, so I had to do a little research. I sat down and took notes on the animation efforts of both seasons. I stared at my computer screen until my eyes started to gloss over, but did I let that stop me? No, I certainly did not, because I had a hot take to answer. And so, after spending what felt like hours analyzing frame by frame these episodes side by side, the animation quality of All-Stars in comparison to its former season, I came to a very, very shocking conclusion. I can't tell the difference. So that's gonna be the end of this video, and thank God it's finally over because I spent so long editing this in the middle of the night, and also there was a hurricane a few days ago and a lot of other stuff too, and I'm glad I'm gonna have a video out. That is the takeaway from this video. Before I go though, I just want to say that no matter what I said about your opinions and takes in this video, I mean no ill will towards you as a person. At the end of the day, this is all just for fun. I'm really glad that there are so many differing opinions in this community because that encourages discussion. So even though some of you had some truly terrible opinions, I'm still glad that you chose to share them with the world. This was a really fun video to make, so I really hope that all of you enjoyed as well. And if you did enjoy this video, then maybe consider leaving a like and subscribing. I'm trying to get to 4,000 subscribers before Korza Corpse, so no pressure. I know a lot of you have been patiently waiting on Disventure Camp Season 1 rankings, and I promise that video is mostly done. I just need to do a few more sections and wait for a few more things. It'll easily be the longest edited video on my channel, so I want to make it the best it can be. But until then, I will see you all next time.